here. We're here, right? Okay,
We're
good.
here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. If you're coming back, thank God for you. Welcome back to Between Two Coaches. We're on a mission to make fitness more human, snarks sold separately. I'm Coach Amanda, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host.
It's Coach Nick. It's me. But today we are joined by a special guest, sports dietitian and personal trainer Holley Samuel. Hi, Holley. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm psyched to be here.
I hear
Yeah.
she's a fan of the pod.
Yeah, super big fan. Honestly, I'm very excited to be here. One, because I feel like I can just be myself. And people might be like, wow, Holley, are you just lying to us in other facets? But no, I'm not. But I'm from New Jersey, and I do feel like you put a filter on when you're talking to people not from that area, because I've now lived in not that area for many years. So I'm excited to talk to two people from the tri-state area. I think I've discussed that before, but yeah, pumped to be here.
Yeah. We learned, Amanda, that Holley and I are both from similar areas of Jersey. So that's super cool. The superior tri-state state.
Nope, we're not doing that. Not up in here.
Yeah.
Not up in here.
I'm not going to fight someone from New York, but I will shake your hand.
See, Holly uses her brain with me. She really does. What, in case there's anyone who lives under a rock, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Holly.
Yeah, I am a sports dietitian. I'm a personal trainer. I have my private practice, Holley Nutrition, where I work with mostly runners, but endurance athletes of all levels. And my master's is in health education, but focuses in eating disorders. So I kind of come at sports nutrition and fueling and talking to people with that lens of not restricting, trying to improve our relationship with food and body image. And I also became a mom this year, so I get to add that to the list of credentials too, which is probably the hardest
Yes.
thing I've done. But
Yes.
we're a mother runner now this year too, and yeah, my husband and I and my son now live in New Hampshire, but I am originally from New Jersey.
We love all that story. We love, being a mom and still enjoying your journey and just bringing, children along for it. And that's, and we're going to segue that into, today's episode we're going to talk about postpartum, return to exercise and running, and, talk a little bit nutrition in there sprinkled in, and it's going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's funny. I think when I was like younger, pre-mom days, just like would kind of be like, that's conversations like not for me. But now that I am a parent and like just in the process of, thinking I wanted to become one, super valuable conversations to have and to listen to, because it's like, wait, how do I do this? What, like, there's no manual. So yeah, I'm excited to chat about this today and be on the other side.
This is one of those conversations that I think both parents and personal trainers, fitness professionals, run coaches, all of us can benefit from tuning into. So we are so grateful that you decided to be a part of the fun. And Holly really did sign up to be a part of the fun. We're going through our pre-topic shtick, starting with Nick, how was your week?
My week, it was fun. Father's Day weekend, so that's always fun. The kids took everything out of our storage room and wrapped it up and put it in a bag and wrapping paper and everything, and then gave it to me. So I've got like a bunch of like toiletries and soaps, and we had 12 bags. They sat in that room for an hour and they're like, you can't come in. And they're just wrapping things, and they handed me back all of our stuff. And I was, so nice, so lovely. And then when it came to put it back, it was, me and my wife to do that, because they weren't doing that because they gave the presents.
Right. That was the gift that kept on giving for you.
It was lovely, but no, they were nice. It was great. We did some bonding. We played some softball and soccer together. I did some running. It's in 1,000,000 degrees plus some more, so that's super fun. I keep dying because I leave at the hottest part of the day because that's my time, and just surviving. But yeah, it was a good week. Enjoyed it. How was your week, Amanda?
Great. We had a good week. Nothing to complain about, to be honest with you. I am excited that it got warmer out. Not sweltering, not heat wave, but like I don't mind the heat, as we discussed on previous episodes and with Elizabeth on her podcast on heat acclimation. I try to thrive in the sauna year round because that's just where I live. So I'm okay with it. I also don't, I use my frontal lobe when I'm going outside. So there's no running after like 10 a.m. for me with what's happening. I'm just letting you, I'm just sharing. I'm just sharing. But today, right before this, I finished up. I want to give a shout out to best sports massage therapist. He's a listener of the pod, Joe from Premier Recovery here in New York City. So if you're in New York City and Westchester, definitely check him out. Body work is a nice to have, and it definitely helps with everything else that we do to keep our bodies strong year round, including nutrition and strength training and resting, right? He just gives me an extra lift. So shout out to Joe. He listens to the pod.
Way to go, Joe.
That's right. All right, Holley. Holley, how was your week?
It was good. We had, first Father's Day for my husband, which was nice. I made like some footprint art with Owen's
Aw.
footprint, which is challenging with a 5-month-old and paint and canvases and trying to keep it a secret, but I did it. I made my husband a picture of like a tractor using his foot because we met on a farm. But so that was successful. But
Where
yeah,
does she come up with these things?
I don't. I thought of it and I was like, I'm gonna do that. And then I was like, I need supplies. And then I was like, I have to get paint on my son's foot. How's that gonna go? But he didn't mind it, so that was good. But yeah, it's been a pretty good week so far. Like Amanda, I absolutely thrive in the heat. It's my favorite. I was sitting outside before this and it's 98 degrees and I was like, this is,
Yes.
I love this. So yeah, I'm here for it. My birthday's in the summer, and I think I live in the wrong state sometimes, but I really love the summer months.
I'm aligned with you. Yeah. Okay. All right. So just so you guys know what you're getting into, there's no complaining from Holley and I.
Yeah.
Not about heat. But speaking of complaints,
We have some complaining to do.
you want to kick us off? Well, we will definitely chime in on your complaint.
Yeah, I'm grieving. I'm grieving again. I feel like I'm always grieving, but I'm really grieving about this new way of social media, this new way of sharing information. And it's basically, when influencers and coaches start sharing about, the tiny amounts of fuel they have, like, oh, I only need one gel because my body's built different. And, they sort of they throw everything out of whack, right? Because now all of a sudden they only need 1 or 2 gels, and now they're convincing the community that their 3, 4, 5, 6, the normal amount of gels is crazy, because look at us. I can run fast and I only need a gel. So what are you all doing wrong? And, I think it's out of control, and it's harming the community, and it's making everyone feel like they're contemplating that last gel or even the last 2 gels of not taking it, because look at these influencers. They don't need it. So what am I doing wrong? So yes, I'm annoyed, angry, and all the things.
Yeah, that's that bullshit. Holley, do you hear from your side working with your clients and runners and even just fitness enthusiasts in general about fueling appropriately for their workouts? What do you hear on your end?
I say, how much time do we have? Yeah, it is that bullshit. And honestly, it's job security every time it happens, but not in the way that I want it to be. Because it would be easier if I just had to educate people on what they should do, but I'm also having to like have them unlearn a lot of misinformation they've picked up from other places that aren't super reputable. Yeah, I actually just got off a call with a client and we were going over, she's running her first marathon, I think in 10 years. And the last time she ran a marathon, she had, was in the thick of an eating disorder. And she's like, I like crawled across the finish line and I've since been to treatment, and I'm just excited to return to the distance in a very, different state. We were going over, her carb load plan, what she's going to eat the morning of the race. She has to travel there. So like, how's that going to look, and where's she going to get food from? And how many gels is she going to have, and taking sports drink and using the aid stations, and, how she's going to carry it. And she's like, it just seems like so much. And like, no one else is doing, like a lot of other people are not doing this. I don't see influencers laying out 10 gels, if they're going to run a 5-hour marathon. I don't, we don't really see people's like pre-race photos with like their pockets loaded up with fuel. Like, it's always like I'm svelte and there's nothing on me and I don't have to carry anything. And she's like, and it just makes me feel kind of crazy, like for, carrying so much and also trying to figure out how to do all of this. And I hear that all the time. I've thought that before, so I totally get it. I've thought it before as a runner. I've also thought it before as a dietitian who was not a sports dietitian. So, living in my neck of the woods in the sports nutrition world, yeah, like it does seem like a lot. And a lot of that's because a lot of people are not doing, as much as they should be doing from a fueling standpoint. And that's why it seems like a lot. So yeah, I would love to see more gels on the flat runners, and your handheld water bottle, and how many replacements of Scratch Labs you're going to have to pack to refill the water bottle. And maybe our pre-race photos, we could have, ridiculously like it's full of chews. Like, it's just a bit more realistic. But I do think it's getting better. One of the last half marathons I ran last year, because I, gave birth and haven't done that in a while. I was actually
its own endurance event.
Yeah, actually, I brought gels for that. We can go into my birth fuel plan if you want, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. I saw a lot more like hydration vests and handheld bottles on like a local half marathon course than I had seen like at a lot of other.
I thought she was going to be like, I saw a lot of hydration vests in the NICU. I was
yeah.
I was very impressed with those moms. Yeah. That's great.
They made me run by to take the cup of water. It was weird, but yeah, but I saw a lot more on the half marathon course than I had seen in a long time. So I feel like it's getting better, but we have a long way to go for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I always think to myself that I'm beating a dead horse when I continue to share content around proper fueling coming from just guidance, because I don't have nutrition credentials, but I am connected very closely with intelligent professionals named Holley Samuel. So I know what is recommended, and I also know what's worked for me as an endurance runner and the greatest success that my athletes have had. And I always think I'm beating a dead horse when I continue to share stories, content, etc., emphasizing this message. Every single time someone will reach out to me saying, "Thank you for saying that." I'm like, I wrote this piece. I'm reposting something just with like a slightly different video from 3 weeks ago. You've been here for like 7 years, Lorraine. You're welcome.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's that important.
Yeah, you got to hear it a bunch of times before you're like, wait a second, they're onto something.
We must drown the algorithm with normalizing proper fueling.
I feel like, and coaches like have a responsibility too. Like I think too often it's not like your athletes look up to you. They hire you not because you're also they trust you and they think you're an expert or just whatever reason they come to you, right? But then they see you and they observe your behaviors. And if you're out here taking 0 gels for your 18-mile long run, it doesn't matter what pace you're running. You definitely obviously need a gel at that point. But like, and you're like, oh, I don't need it. And then you're trying to tell them how they need so many gels. Like they're learning from you and they're observing you. And like, you need to do better to treat your athletes right. And you need to do the right things, and you need to carry a bottle, and you need to do the things that are definitely needed. Right. And so that's one point. And the second point I find interesting is like, so people run marathons, but like someone runs a 50K, all of a sudden, like everything's off. The same person who would have like 2 gels on a marathon will have like a laid out fuel plan. Like they're doing 50 mile and they have like all this food and they're like, oh, I'll eat for a trail race. But like, for a marathon, absolutely not. Like that's, it's a road race. We don't need that. So it's just like crazy how you switch into the ultra world and everyone's ready to, no one is, I mean, people are still under fueling, but everyone is bragging about how much fuel they're taking in that world. When in our world, everyone's bragging about how little fuel they take in.
Yeah. You go on the trails and they're like slamming bacon sandwiches and you're like, where was this energy, on the road? But yeah, it's so true. And I think, even thinking about like if you show up to any run club for a group run, it's the same thing. It's like if you're doing a long run together, I've showed up to runs like this where I'm like the only one who considered bringing fuel, and they're all also faster than me, right? So I think there's that dynamic too, where it's like, oh my god, they're not carrying fuel, and they're faster than me. So therefore, that must be what it takes, to get faster. Or I know there's a lot of conversation with, well, I'm a slower runner, so I don't deserve as much fuel. Or I'm a bigger runner and I don't deserve as much fuel. And it's like, that is so, backwards. If anything, you need more if you're out there for longer, or if you're a larger bodied person, your body burns more energy, you need more. And also, if you can take more fuel in, research shows, and I can give you guys PubMed IDs to cite if you want, but research shows
Not necessary. They're going to have to trust the motherfucking source.
wild. Research shows that it will improve your performance. Not to mention your health and your recovery and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's really tough when like the groupthink is really not there yet. And it hasn't been cool to fuel for many years. I think it's been more cool to be like, what can I get away with? As minimum as possible. So yeah, a lot of deconditioning, unlearning those bad habits, and trying to replace it with solid info and practicing what I preach to.
Or me, who was taking awesome sauce gels, thinking I'm crushing my fueling at like 90 to 100 grams an hour, and being like, oh no, you're really taking like 55.
You're mediocre saucing me. Yeah.
Ah.
You did it now. Things we know.
It's true. It's true. That's that bullshit.
Sums it up.
Play sound clip.
Yes. I think it's time to get into today's topic, which is our postpartum return to exercise, running, all the tips and tricks that Holley has gained along the way as somebody who not only gave birth to her son, exercised through said pregnancy, but also works with hundreds of parents at this point. So I think just to start the conversation, let's talk a little bit about running, what it was like for you, and exercising just in general, because you also lift while pregnant first.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll preface this by saying, I'm a trainer, I'm a sports dietitian, I have education on pregnancy, postpartum, all that good stuff, but I'm not a total expert in pelvic health. I'm not a pelvic floor physical therapist. There are people who have extra certifications in, pregnancy related exercise. There's really not a ton of info out there for a pregnant person who also wants to continue being an athlete. So I did do a lot of research because I had to, because my doctors were like, why do you want to run a half marathon? Okay. So yeah, we can talk about that. But yeah, I think my experience with pregnancy, and this is my son, Owen. So my experience was kind of like, okay, I can listen to guidelines, I can ask the professionals, and also it's just helpful to hear other people's experiences because we just don't have a ton of direct recommendations for pregnant athletes. So yeah, my experience was, I went into pregnancy in the best shape of my life. Arguably, I just ran my PR at the Boston Marathon, so I did have quite a bit of fitness leading into pregnancy. And then pretty quickly, around 8 weeks, I was put on pelvic rest for 2 months. So no exercise really. They kind of got a little bit more flexible with that as my symptoms improved. But basically, I had placenta previa. So quick anatomy lesson, the placenta is supposed to attach, higher up in the uterus. But when everything's really small, in the first trimester, sometimes it will attach lower and kind of cover the cervix, which is the baby's exit. And as things, stretch, if you think of putting a Sharpie on a balloon and then blowing up the balloon, the dot will move up. That's kind of what happens with the placenta usually, but sometimes it stays at the bottom. And it's a problem, basically, if you do anything that could cause contractions or just extra stress on the pelvis or that area. It can cause bleeding, miscarriage, death. It's really serious. So, you could know all this stuff and prepare yourself for pregnancy, but sometimes shit goes sideways and you just don't, control everything. So they found that on my ultrasound and we're like, oh, pelvic rest, was a lot of people do when they get pregnant, just because you're doubling blood volume, building a human, all that good stuff. And then they put me on pelvic rest for 2 months, basically let me walk and lift below 15 pounds, no squatting, no pressure on my pelvis, basically. They were like, be smart, you can walk, you can like do some bicep curls. That was kind of the guidance I was given personally. And then I had an ultrasound where that placenta previa problem resolved. And they were like, you can do whatever you want. Bye. So that was great, and I had always been someone who really wanted to be active during pregnancy if I was able to be within reason. Obviously, I didn't, the main goal was to grow a healthy baby and for me to stay healthy in the process. I was really excited to be able to continue my activity. So I did kind of build up my running. And again, I took 8 weeks off from pelvic rest, about 2 months, but I had all this fitness before. So it wasn't like I was just coming off the couch after doing nothing for several years, but I was able to build up my running and lifting again pretty quickly, like with, within reason. And I ran a half marathon in my second trimester. I ran a half marathon in my third trimester. And then around 34-ish weeks, I think, I just had a lot of pelvic pressure with running because your pelvic pubis joint moves more during pregnancy. And with running, that can cause it to shear and move even more. Shear is such a bad word. Like, we're talking about the pubic joints, like, ooh, shearing. It hurts. So that's kind of what, made me stop running. I was going to PT and kind of doing all the things, but they were like, it'll probably be better once you're not pregnant anymore, but it's probably just going to keep happening with a growing cannonball, on your pelvis. And I was really lucky because I was still able to do the elliptical, go for walks, do stairs, and lift right up until my water broke, basically. So
it was the Romanian deadlift that did it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a really positive experience overall. Definitely still a roller coaster. Like, I had a lot of ups and downs, especially with just some of the anxiety and uncertainty around being on pelvic rest for what could potentially be very serious, but also would probably most likely be nothing, and resolve itself kind of at the beginning. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped. I know I had some people who were not, maybe super active or not able to be active during their pregnancies. So I don't know how you're like moving so much or exercising so much during pregnancy. And I was kind of like, man, my body hurts the most when I'm sitting. Back pain, just kind of sitting still is like awful. Like, that just felt awful for me. It does when I'm not pregnant too. So I was really lucky to be able to keep doing that and to also want to be able to keep doing that and for it to feel good. But that was a lot of me talking.
That's fine. We love the story. No, it's great. I love that, you started off the pregnancy and it was like, all right, well, you have to bed rest for 2 months. And then like, you could have easily been, all right, well, maybe I won't run a half. Maybe I really won't get back into running. But, you were like, no, I'm cleared. See you later. I'm going to keep this journey going. I'm excited about it. Like, I'm going to, I want to keep active. I want to keep exercising. That was relatable. And then also like, just here, like the complications, right? So with my wife, when she got pregnant, like she had a condition and like we spent the first trimester both times with like, well, you could, this pregnancy could get, terminated at any point. Like, we don't know. So both times it was just like, oh, we got to get through this. Who knows what happens? Like every day was like a roller coaster of emotions. And then like, you got to get through it and you're like, oh, okay, well now they're like, now you're much safer. And you're like, okay, like, but it just like, yeah, it was like, so
it's a roller coaster.
It's definitely a roller coaster, and like definitely more for the woman, but like, you're trying to support, so you're living that same, journey together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my husband and I would always joke before I got pregnant. He was like, I feel like I'm going to like act like you're made of glass when you're pregnant, and I need to get over myself because I know you're just going to keep carrying all the groceries in one trip, like up the driveway. Like, and you're just going to keep on keeping on, and I need to get over it. And then, once I kind of had some of those complications early on and I was like, I'm not okay, like mentally, he really was able to be my rock, which was helpful. And, also prevent me from carrying groceries up the hill up the driveway because I was not allowed to at that point. But yeah, it's a roller coaster ride, especially because, you can control a lot of things, but you also just have so many uncontrollable factors that you kind of have to see what cards you're dealt once it happens.
So you went back to your farmer's carry work once you were cleared.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Once I was cleared, they gave me the pregnant athlete advice of just listen to your body and don't do too much, but you can probably do some. So, very ambiguous information. Um, but my understanding is, if you were experienced at lifting, you were exercising before pregnancy, you can keep doing those things with some modifications if you need to, like during pregnancy. And also, if you were never active before pregnancy, there is benefit to starting to become active. You don't need to start training for a marathon for the first time because you got pregnant, but you could start moving, and it's beneficial for everyone as long as you're medically cleared to do so.
I have a couple of clients who I still work with today who did not exercise very much prior to their pregnancy and started with me while they were pregnant. And one of them, it was for their second child, and they were shocked. They were like, this birth, it was so much better than my first. I'm like, okay, great. We'll keep on keeping on. So that's really, so speaking of, like, you were talking about, you basically moved and you were working out right until your water broke. So you were lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Were you was it like literally, was it right around like, were you lifting and then your water broke?
So
I don't mean to get too like into it, but now I'm a little curious.
We can get into it. It was 6:55 in the morning. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I was lifting probably 3 times a week. I was using like the elliptical, the Stairmaster. I was like walking to the stadium because we live on campus at the University of New Hampshire and they have stairs. And I was like walking the stairs and walking there instead of running, basically. And there's a bathroom there, so helpful when you're pregnant. And I was doing that probably, every other day or so. I was just focusing on like, I just want to do the things that make me feel good and feel like I'm, pushing myself, but not, to the point where I don't feel good anymore. Because also, the later you get into pregnancy, the more you realize basically that one day you're going to have to wake up and basically run a marathon of giving birth and doing labor, but you have no idea when that's going to start. So you also don't want to be super sore all the time either, just in case. Yeah, so I think the day before, so if anyone's like newly pregnant or has their own experiences, a lot of the times your water does not break like in the movies. Like it won't break until you start pushing, or they'll break it for you when you're in labor. Like that's not really a thing that happens. But with me, it was like it was in the movies. I think I went for like a 4-mile walk the day before. I did some of the stairs on campus. I lifted weights. I did my work and, activities of daily living. And then I woke up the next morning. I went into the kitchen. I like bent over to open the dishwasher and my water broke like on the kitchen floor. And I was like, wow, okay. Today is the day we're running a marathon. But yeah, so I really I was active, right up until that happened. And I do think it helped me a ton with labor. I had a very, pretty smooth labor and delivery process. My postpartum, recovery was pretty smooth. It's still hard, even if you're super fit, but, I think it just gives you a little bit more strength to hang in labor, because it gets super intense and it can be really long. And also, joke is like literally everything in parenthood is like heavy, like, and your kid just keeps growing and getting heavier to lift. Like my advice,
it's the natural progressive overload. No
literally.
cutback weeks though.
Like anyone who's pregnant or thinks they want kids or maybe has kids already, like start lifting weights now, because it's like, I don't know how people do this without having some sort of background in weightlifting, because carrying like a 15-pound child and an infant carrier on your side, like a weighted like suitcase carry, like, and putting them into the car, like it's all hard, even if you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, it definitely just helps with like your life after labor and delivery.
You heard that, folks? Lift heavy shit.
Yeah, serious.
So how did you know when to start? Tell us more about starting back into your fitness routine again, what that looks like and how you knew.
Yeah. So, like you said, I've worked with so many different, so many parents. I've heard a lot of stories like, Whenever I sneeze, I pee myself, or when I go for runs, I leak, or I'm afraid to take in hydration on the run because I'm afraid I'm going to like have to pee more often, because I've heard just a lot of, moms especially not know some of the things that we have access to and know today, and not take care of their postpartum recovery or their pelvic health, and have these like chronic long-term issues. So, I really did hear a lot of that. And I was like, okay, so I have a plan of what I think I want to do and what I think would be helpful, so that maybe I don't have some of those long-term complications, just because I've heard so many stories. So what I did was, and what I found to be helpful, was I went to see a pelvic floor physical therapist. They exist. They're amazing. Highly recommend if you're, pregnant or postpartum. If you're postpartum for, a couple hours, or you're postpartum for 20 years, like, you would benefit from going to see a pelvic floor PT. And I saw them, I think, twice when I was pregnant, just to kind of get my baseline and, help me with some of the pubic pain I was having in my third trimester. And really just to kind of build that relationship, so that they could help me, postpartum, have a good understanding of how things were healing, return to exercise, what things I should think about, if there was anything I shouldn't do or should think about specific to like what was going on with me. And you would think you would get that information at your like OB or midwife 6-week postpartum visit, but it's laughable. Like, you do not get that at all at that visit, at least with most. I mean, they didn't even check to see how I was healing at that visit. Like, they were like, "You good? Cool. Bye." Like, they're like, "How do you, like, what birth control method do you want to use so that you don't get pregnant like right away?" And like, "Okay, bye." So they just really don't, or it's not thorough at all.
It's giving healthcare in America.
It's giving healthcare in America, for sure. So I was like, well, I do want to be thorough, and I do want all this information. And I had a second-degree tear during my birth. So I had stitches, and, when you have it's a torn muscle when you have any kind of tearing. So like, if you had a torn hamstring, what would you do? Would you stick your head in the sand and never go see PT and just hope for the best, like, and live with it forever? Hopefully not. Probably not. So, if you tear a pelvic floor muscle, pelvic floor PT to go and rehab that process. So that's what
I
I
need
did.
to cut you off because it's so, and I know this, like, for me personally, and I'm sure you experience it to the nth power.
Yeah.
Isn't it so frustrating to be an educated professional in the healthcare space, and then you visit other professionals who you're trusting to be as thorough as you are, and you're like, "You don't know my ass from my elbow, do you, Dr. Smith?" Literally. So and you're going into that appointment with way more education and self-advocacy than the general population.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary.
It's super scary. And I had more about like birth. Like, I had preeclampsia during my labor and for postpartum. So I had high blood pressure. And I had to be put on like blood pressure medication for a few weeks to bring it back down. So like, they were managing, like, again, they're doctors. They're like, they manage like that kind of side of things a lot of the times. But when it comes to like how your just body is functioning long term, like, a lot of the times that's just not in their zone of vision with these quick appointments that they're kind of set up to take. I knew that would be the case, so that's why I sought out pelvic floor PT. I mean, I'm very privileged. Like, it wasn't covered by insurance. I had to pay out of pocket, but it was worth every single penny. And I didn't really have complications. Like, it was for my information and my peace of mind and my clearance, basically, to go back to fitness with some guidance. I mean, if you had a C-section, if you had like, a really like a third or fourth degree tear, an episiotomy, an instrument assisted delivery, a lot of trauma with birth, bladder prolapse, like, if you're having leaking, if you have the urge to pee all the time, if you feel like your pelvis isn't quite right, like, or if you just want the peace of mind, oh my God, it's so worth going to see a pelvic floor PT, because they're going to actually spend the time with you. They're going to properly assess you very thoroughly and give you like a step-by-step, this is what you should do to go fix this problem, heal, and get back to doing the things that you want to do. So for me, I went to see them around like 5 or 6 weeks postpartum. And to be honest, I wasn't super expecting to be cleared to run that early, just because I know we're kind of hearing postpartum higher impact exercise like running maybe is a better idea closer to like 12 to 16 weeks postpartum. Just that's kind of when the body, is ready on some of the newer studies that we have. But she took me through a whole assessment. She did a pelvic exam, and like assessed me hopping on one foot a certain amount of times. Like there was a very like strategic assessment. And she was like, yeah, I mean, you're good. Like you're healing well and you can go run. And she was like, but walk, run, couch to 5K program, like marathoner. Like, I don't want you to go out and just run 5 miles, like, because you think that's a short run. And I really appreciated that because I was like, yeah, I have an idea of what I think I should do as a trainer, but it's really helpful to hear from someone else. So that's what I did. I started a walk run program that I just have myself as a service. I have like a couch to 5K program that I offer, but I started that around 6 weeks postpartum and have built my way up very slowly from there. But yeah, I mean, postpartum's a ride. Like I was cleared to do it and we were sleeping kind of okay. So I felt okay going to do it. But if you don't, don't rush it.
Yeah. Like, and so my wife had 2 C-sections both times. And like what I was shocked with and what I hear from your story and from my athlete's story and from her story is like, she just goes to her doctor at 8 weeks and they're like, it's been 2 months. Like there's no like plan, there's no nothing, you're just good. Like, and like, there's almost no path forward to like active women coming back. It's like, go figure it out yourself, go do all this research, go find, if you know what a pelvic floor therapist is, go find one. Or otherwise just wing it and have complications or have issues and then figure out what to do because your doctor's like, well, you had a baby and your body looks okay and no major symptoms here. So we don't know what to do. We don't know anything else. So it's like, there's just there's no clear path like back for athletes. It's crazy. The same thing your pelvic floor therapist told you is when I work with athletes who come back, it's just always walk around. It's a lot of walk around. It's like taking them so far back because they're all active marathoners or, runners. And they're like, oh, should I start with like a 3 mile, 4 mile run? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I was like, no, like, but so like, it's helping them really like, and they're appreciative of it because, they're like, they would probably run 30 miles their first week if they could.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean, your wife's a champ, 2 C-sections. Like you hear that all the time and you're like, oh yeah, they had a C-section, like they had a baby. Like that's very common, but it's so hard. Like that is a major, major surgery.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you have to take care of a small human after, like, and you're sleep deprived. Like how I explain this to people is like pregnancy is kind of like long and hard and challenging physically and mentally. And then you get no break from that. You go right into labor and delivery, which is hard and life-changing and potentially very traumatizing for some people. Even if you have a smooth, blissful experience like I did, it's still a life-changing experience. And then you get no break from that and you go right into postpartum and you have there's no sleep. Like even if you just had like one night to get a night's sleep in between all of these events, it would be helpful. But it's like you're doing a marathon to warm up for like an ultra marathon to warm up for an ultra, like an Ironman with no breaks. It's insane.
And then you never sleep again is what I keep hearing. They turn 18. Some of them it's 25. Some of them, my little sister's almost 30. My parents still don't sleep. You see what I'm saying? It's never ending. But all jokes aside, it really think that this is shouldn't be a hot take, but it is. I think that the reason why we are in a society that normalizes the conversation around cesareans and all the things that you mentioned, Holly, is because moms really do not whine as much as they should compared to their counterparts. Present company excluded.
Good.
No, it's true. Like Nick is a real one. He is a present father and he's supportive. And that's not all fathers and that's not all parents. And moms, if you just complained a little bit more in the right spaces, maybe they'd take us seriously. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about misogyny and the patriarchy all day long, but like it's true. Like once you go through it, you look at any parent differently. You're like, oh my God, you are a god. You are a goddess. Like this is,
Right.
you went through this, and a lot of people had absolutely no support, like medically, so I think, yeah, I mean, my experience was, all jokes aside, like my experience was incredibly positive. Like I knew a lot going into it. I could advocate for myself. I too have an incredibly supportive partner who can think about other people and their feelings, and holds the fort down really well, and is a present father. And
Men, are you
it's still,
listening? Are you listening? Turn the volume up in your car.
yeah, and it's still hard. So I think just like, again, had I not known about a pelvic floor PT, had I not known that, hey, your return to fitness should be individualized and probably slower than you think it should be, but also you're very capable and your body is not ruined, I think, yeah, it could have gone super differently if I hadn't known those things. So I appreciate everyone before me telling me about their experiences so that, we could go figure some of this out. But yeah, I mean, I was able to return pretty quickly, but also the kind of run, couch to 5K type program. I mean, the first couple of runs for the first couple of weeks were 10 to 20 minutes long, walk, run, intervals. And honestly, that's like what I filled up for anyway. I was like, I don't want to do more than this. I'm
You
tired.
were meeting yourself where you were in your fitness. Like
Exactly.
also that's a part of your process, whether or not you are a mom. So that sounds so since you started to talk about that, tell us a little bit more about now that you are more into now you're running straight through for 30, 40, 50, etc. minutes, right? So and lifting around where you were before. Tell us about how that process has been for you.
Yeah. So I built up my mileage. I use kind of minutes, like time on feet, and I kind of got it to where I was walk running for 30 to 40 minutes, like 3 to 4 days a week. And then I started to kind of close the gap because I'm someone who likes to run continuously, and not use run walk method typically. I kind of closed the gap on, okay, I want to get to more running than walking in these 30 to 40 minutes until it was eventually like all running. Um, at a easy effort, but I mean, everything feels kind of hard when you're returning to fitness. So we know how that goes. But, and taking days off if I felt like I needed to, if Owen didn't sleep, which was a lot of the time, not pushing it. And I'm also very fortunate that I created a maternity leave for myself and my business. My husband had a paternity leave. My parents live close by and are super involved. So again, we had a lot of help. So I always like to preface that, because I think if I was returning to work right away in an office, my husband had no time off, I didn't have help, I probably would start my run walk program like closer to now, months later, because you're just not recovered, if you don't have the help. Now, yeah, I'm running about 20-ish miles per week. My longest run is around 6 or 7 miles. I'm lifting 3 or 4 times a week, which is my normal. And I've kind of just scaled up, like I'm calling it like unmodifying things again. So like, being able to do pull-ups again, or being able to do core exercises where my core is functioning well. So, I don't have to modify things as much like I did during pregnancy and initially postpartum while everything was healing. And I still go to PT, my regular PT. I was cleared from pelvic health, but I go to my regular PT once a month to kind of work on, runner stuff, things that I've always had, like low back issues, that type of stuff, but more for maintenance. Honestly, I probably could do more if I wanted to push myself more, but I don't. And I'm someone who likes to quit while they're ahead and be a bit more cautious, because I love the process so much that I don't want to be dumb and like injure myself and then have to take a bunch of time off, so that's where I'm at right now. I've started to add in a little bit of speed work again, in the past like 2 weeks. And honestly, I have like no races on the calendar. Like I just want to kind of keep building without the pressure of anything.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
want
I'm not hearing in your program any like single arm baby chest presses. Is there a reason why you haven't brought that back?
Yeah.
Because how heavy is Owen, by the way?
He's probably about 15 pounds now. Yeah.
There's always tomorrow, Holly.
I mean, honestly, he could be heavier for the chest presses if we're talking about, strength. But
That's
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm like suitcase carry, so I can carry him in the infant carrier. Farmer's carry, so I can carry
check.
him in the infant carrier and all the groceries. And then, you know, I'm like weighted things so that I can just like wear him on my person because that he likes like the baby carrying stuff.
Right. This is
Um,
why you have children,
Yes.
to make them
yeah,
useful.
So many
Like,
yeah,
squats I
if
did
you're
with my
not
kids.
going to use it, right.
yeah.
Not going
I
to
like
use them.
getting up off the ground while holding him without using your hands.
Oof.
Also,
We
very
love that
valuable.
Owen get up. We love that Owen get up. Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
But
I
Yeah.
cut you off, Nick.
I was going to say, I loved that, you know, you talked about not rushing the process and coming back on your own terms and that kind of stuff. And like, you know, it's sort of, I didn't do a lot of research before I had a kid, you know, just of what to expect afterwards. And, you know, I remember joking with Kelly of like, oh, so now we have a baby, we just sleep all the night and we wake up in the morning and feed them. And she's like, oh, absolutely not. Like we get up every 2 hours. I'm like, what do you mean every two?
You're
What?
never sleeping
And I'm like, but
again.
like, so, and that's, then you learn it, right? But like, then, you know, every parent talks to other parents and always the conversation is, oh, well, my kid sleeps so well, or like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, but like every kid sleeps so differently and there's sleep progression and just a random night. So like really meeting yourself where you're at, not forcing it. So like, you know, you're 4 months in and you're like, you're getting good sleep and you're like, oh, I can start working hard. And all of a sudden your kid like gets 4 nights in a row where they get 2 hours of sleep, like, and you're like forcing a run when like, no, it's like you're up and, you know, as a supportive dad, I'm getting up too. And I'm like there and I'm feeding and whatever else to help. Right. So we're both tired. And like, you know, so then I would have the same thing I did as a dad is I just met myself. I would skip runs because I was tired because like, yeah, we're not getting the same sleep. Why am I going to push myself towards an injury?
Exactly. And like sleep is so key. And like I've always slept well for the most part and been able to prioritize it. So that, I mean, going into parenthood, I was like, I'm definitely the most nervous about being sleep deprived because I don't know how I'm going to do with that. But you do kind of find a new gear and you just adapt to it. And it's like it's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. But, and our kid, I mean, I have a lot of friends who have babies like the same age. So, you know, I'm kind of like comparing without falling into the comparison trap. But you know, I'm like, he's not a good sleeper compared to some of these others that I know. So I'm like, okay, I can kind of wrap my head around that and modify things because, yeah, I mean, doing a workout on 2 hours of sleep is a horrible idea.
Moms y'all are the most resilient in the species, hands down, the most resilient. So, and I'm sure this comes up in your conversations with your mom friends, parents, etc. This kind of stuff happened before you were pregnant, just as a trainer and as a sports dietitian to parents. Talk to us a little bit about mom guilt and how that presents itself, if it does.
Yeah, I think I, heard a lot about this like before I had a baby and I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of get why that would happen. I mean, I think again hearing about that beforehand, I feel like I don't experience it as much now because or if I do, I'm like I'm not the only person experiencing this. Um but yeah, it's kind of like the idea of, whenever you're going to take time for yourself or do something for yourself or be away from your family, you kind of have that guilt factor that like ruins whatever self-care thing you're trying to do. So, I mean, I was so adamant about trying to do as many things as possible to just feel a little normal, postpartum from, I always joke on my Instagram from like having food and water before caffeine, to, taking my supplements, my prenatals at a certain time of day or going for a walk or, trying to do some things that made me feel like myself when like everything else is kind of changing pretty quickly when you have a baby, especially your first. So, I was pretty adamant about that. And it did help me feel better, first of all, but also just not feel as guilty for doing those things because I felt just like I could then be a better parent, returning from taking the time to do those things. And again, I have a really supportive partner who's like, hey, you should go for a walk, or hey, you should go do that thing you wanted to do. And that makes I think the biggest difference in the world. So I haven't experienced it a ton, but I hear about it all the time. And I think some of it is pressure we're putting on ourselves and some of it's pressure society is putting on us. That's a whole other conversation, like, trying to be an entrepreneur and a mom and people like thinking I was just going to quit my business because I had a baby. And I was like, oh no. It's fine if people do that, but like, I'm not doing that.
She's not the one.
Yeah, yeah. It's like no one's asking my husband about, if his job's changing because he had a baby.
That
Um,
part.
yeah, so like, and that's not his fault. It's just societal pressures. And then I think some of it too for people is, yeah, if you maybe don't have as much support or you don't have a supportive partner, it makes a huge difference for sure.
Yeah, what I always saw about mom guilt was hard with my wife is like, I, even being a present dad, it's hard sometimes. My kids I'll be in the kitchen and I'll be like, hey, do you want anything to eat? And they'll be like, no. And then they'll grab the waffles out of the freezer. They'll walk all the way upstairs. They'll walk into the shower and they'll say, Mom, can you make these for me? And I'll be like, guys, like, but so like anytime she would try and leave, like they would, I'm trying to be supportive, but like she would go out for like a 10-minute, 15-minute run. And like my kids are like 3 and 5 at the time. And they're like crying hysterically at the door while she's gone the whole time. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't tell her this happened. I don't want to like make her feel worse, but also like, this is super hard because I'm like, hey guys, we can do anything. Here's ice cream. I was like, whatever, like just let mommy go exercise. And they're having none of it. And it's just like, so I see it from my perspective, like just always trying to be like, I try and like distract. They're better now. They're 5 and 7, but like always trying to distract them so she could get out of the house and do something and like just prolong it until they figured out she wasn't here.
Yeah.
Pro
You're
tip.
trying to divert the guilters from guilt tripping her.
Yeah.
That's a good tactic. As run coaches, as personal trainers, as just professionals working with parents, moms, what are some things that you think a coach should know?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of coaches obviously are parents too. So you can kind of pull from your own experience and have some empathy when they're like, yeah, sleep regression. You're like, yeah, I get that. And I think just having empathy and holding space is helpful. If you're a coach and you're not a parent and you're like, I can read the writing and understand what they're telling me, but I haven't lived it. It's like anything else. I don't think you need to have had a heart attack to be a great cardiac surgeon. You can be a great coach to parents without having been a parent. But I think it's important to know, one, having a kid's a super life changing event. And it basically, I mean, can dig a person into a deep, deep hole of nutrient depletion, exhaustion, being overstressed. So the approach to take, especially with someone who's maybe freshly postpartum or has kids and they're kids, so they're going through changes all the time, and just when you figure them out, they're changing again. And if that's something that they're bringing up that maybe is like stressful, just understanding that, approaching that situation with like so much caution in terms of putting any intensity in their schedule, asking them if you think it'd be helpful to take a cutback week, and emphasizing, hey, like this isn't going to be detrimental to your goals. It actually might help because you won't be digging yourself into a deeper hole. Because I know a lot of athletes will just muscle through. So I think sometimes just understanding your client and approaching that with them in that way can be helpful. And like strength training, tell them they need to do it. That's my advice because it's so important for parents just to feel better as people. Yeah, I think I'm always the coach, and I know from what I hear, you guys are this way too. Like, I'm always the person where, I feel like I'm holding people back because they will just muscle through and dig themselves into a hole. And I'm holding the space to just have a more, longevity approach, versus telling someone they're being a wuss and to get up and go do it anyway, even if, their leg's broken. Parents need less of that and more of like the compassion and the space, and the permission to take care of themselves.
Yeah, you want to lead with empathy. Like that's where I start. Like, and even if you aren't a parent, like you need to understand like this life is very different for, moms and dads post pregnancy, right? Like they have a person they're raising and there's sometimes their joy and love comes from being with that person versus going for a run. And that's okay, right? And sometimes life gets in the way or kids things come up out of nowhere and you're like supporting that stuff and all that stuff's okay, right? So it's really helping, like you said, Holly, like, as a coach, you really want to just make sure you're helping athletes do less than more because I've never met an athlete who I've had to push to do. Rarely have I met an athlete I had to push to do more, but every athlete I have to push to do less. And Moms and dads, same thing. Like moms are going to come back and they're going to want to go right, especially after the first kid, they want to go right back to where they were. Like everyone's like, I want to get back into it now. Now it's time for my goals. And yes, it is good. It is time for your goals, and it's great to have passion about them, but we have to work our way back. And we have to understand that like there'll be a lot of different things thrown at you as a mom now, as a provider that didn't exist before. And it's okay to miss a long run during, a big tired of training because your kid got sick. You're probably going to get sick too because you're taking care of your kid. And, it's hard to avoid all the germs. When your kids go to daycare, like every parent experiences this, where all of a sudden their kid's sick all the time and you're sick all the time. And, eventually it stops. But like all these things are like parts of it. And just as a coach, just have empathy with your athletes. Don't be like, oh, well, why you're sick again? Like no one wants to be sick. We're sick because our kids are sick and they touched everything on the ground and now they hugged us and you're like, great. Or they sneezed in your face because that's a lovely one. Yes, they do that. Anyway.
Yeah. This non-parent personal trainer / run coach and fitness professional, in my job, I always say the greatest compliment is when I'm hired by a mom. It's the greatest compliment because they're not only trusting me with their body and getting them to feel more capable where they're at today. We just, per our previous email, they just gave a whole ass birth. They are already limited on resources and time and energy, and they're trusting me to help them navigate this time of their life, which will only contribute to their success for years to come. So it is the greatest compliment to be hired by a mom, and we all need more humanity in our coaching. So it is at a minimum a practice in that, being a good ass human.
Yeah, not saying things like we all have the same 24 hours in a day. I love that fitness quote.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, it's just like
to
yes,
throw
we
in the
do.
trash with you, Chadley.
Chadley.
Go in the garbage and don't find your way out.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think to any parent listening too, like, and when you're coaching parents, I think it's also important to instill the confidence of like, you can absolutely reach your goals. You have done really hard things. I think going through like postpartum, birth, all that good stuff, and just thinking of other people who have gone through those things too. And like those same people may be saying things like, oh, well, I could never, train for a half marathon. It'd be way too hard. I'm like, what? You pushed a human, or a human left your body in some way and you grew them from scratch. You can definitely train for a half marathon. Like I wish, parents kind of understood like that's a big deal. And like you can go do really hard things. And when I'm looking at, my stride pace, like when I'm incorporating strides back into my training, and it's like the pace that I ran my last marathon at, but I'm doing it for strides now. I'm like, yeah, of course I'd like to be back to where I was, but also it's exciting because the girl, before having a baby ran a marathon at this pace, and this girl now post baby is way freaking tougher than that girl. So she's going to be able to go do bigger and better things. And also that girl was pretty tough pre-baby. So like, just imagine what we're capable of now. And you feel like, oh, I just wish I could be, somewhere else in my fitness. But yeah, brick by brick.
Coming.
It's
yes.
coming.
Things so taking off your personal trainer / fitness half. Okay, again, English guys, after 5 p.m. Eastern time, it's not great for us over here. Taking off the fitness hat, going into your dietitian hat. What are some things from a nutrition perspective that may help moms return to running or just exercise in general postpartum?
You need so much more fuel than you think you do, which I feel like people are sick of me saying. But it's true. Again, pregnancy, you're growing a whole new freaking human. It's super depleting to you. You really got to make sure you're fueling yourself properly through pregnancy so you grow the new human without also digging yourself into a hole. Birth, pretty hard thing, very depleting. You're going to lose blood somewhere, no matter how the baby comes out.
Holley recommends 90 grams of carbs per hour during birth.
I do, during birth. I mean, it's true. It's over 2 hours long for most people. So yeah, that would fit into long runs. But Yeah, no, my fuel plan was really something for birth. I think the nurses were equally as impressed as they were confused by Connor feeding me like frosted flakes in the shower while I was laboring. It was effective though. I PR'd, but anyway, so super depleting thing. And then postpartum, super depleting, especially if you are someone who breastfeeds. You're continuing to grow that human using your body. Yeah, from a nutrition standpoint, I think the basics are super important. So, eating within an hour of waking up, eating every 2 to 4 hours throughout the day, having balanced meals, trying to fuel before you just chug a bunch of caffeine, staying hydrated, all of those things are super important. And then, honoring hunger cues. I've never been more hungry in my life than I was in the first week after giving birth, starting to breastfeed, like never in my life. Bottomless pit. Again, a lot of these foundations I already set for myself that were kind of like non-negotiable habits that promote health in my life, I was able to just kind of lean on and build off of. So again, I can see if you don't have that, how you easily dig yourself into a hole. So I think just making sure that you're kind of coming from that growth and abundance mindset and not trying to restrict yourself, not trying to beat your body into submission because it looks different than it did before you got pregnant. And just understanding that, again, you did a marathon to warm up for an ultra marathon to warm up for an Ironman. It requires quite a bit of fuel to recover.
Yes, it is. It is an endurance event. So now bringing us to presence, do you have any tips for gaining confidence back if that's something that you're having a hard time with in a postpartum body?
Yeah, I think this is a big topic. And like just being postpartum now, like the algorithm will just like put things in front of me. And I'm like, whoa, what a can of worms this world it can be. Like, the before and after pictures or losing the baby weight or bouncing back or, oh my God, you don't even look like you had a baby or wow. When are you going to go on a diet or doctors telling you those things? Like, it's just not.
I wish those doctors would bounce their head against an exposed brick wall. Like it is I can't believe they're still saying that.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's really tough. And I think for a lot of moms, there's a period of time initially postpartum where everyone kind of gets it. You just pushed a baby out. Of course, for anyone who doesn't know, you're still going to look pregnant after you give birth for, a while. It's a little different for everyone, but a baby just came out of you. Things don't just like snap back into place. And even if it looks like they did, there's still a lot of different stuff happening on the inside, but I think like once you get to like that 6, which is like where I am now, you get to like that 5 month, that 6 month mark where people are like, you got this. Like it's been months. You should be bounced back by now. You should be fine. And just knowing that you can be years and decades postpartum and again, just not feel fine, and feel different. And I think it's important to focus on the mindset around that, and making that coming from a more positive, self-caring place. And then, working on the physical habits that are going to positively impact your health and how you feel, knowing that weight is not a habit, appearance is not a habit. Those are factors, but there are things that we have, I think, less control over than we think we do. But we do have control over what we do and our habits every day. So trying to do things that make us feel good and layer that on top of itself when you feel like you have the time and energy to work on some of this postpartum, is super important. And I mean, dads and partners too, like you're going to be sleep deprived and go through a life change too. So just trying to take care of yourself so that you can also take care of your family.
Yeah, I love that answer. I feel like it's not talked about enough of like just this confidence back in the body you once had, and like how like there's things you can do, or you could easily snap back and be like, here's where I was, here's where like you said, all this stuff shoved in your face on social media because your phone heard you talk about being pregnant, and now it's giving you that kind of content. So I think it's a really good topic. It's really important to kind of talk and help people with, because you don't know what people are going through or how they're feeling. But I bet I'm sure every woman feels this way as they come back through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just knowing that like it takes time, like it's not going to happen overnight. And everything's a phase. So, I think just being able to prioritize, okay, like, if they're if they're sleeping through the night, like what can I do to make myself feel good? And take kind of advantage of this. And when you do feel good, like focus on allowing yourself to feel good because, that's a win. Yeah. I think the confidence piece is tough because everyone's experience is so different. And when, like, for me, I was really glad I did a lot of work on my mindset around body image way pre pregnancy because it really helped me kind of have some tools to work with when those thoughts were coming up during pregnancy and postpartum. And yeah, I mean, cleansing your social media if you need to of unhelpful messaging. Like, where am I right now? I keep getting ads for like, you're 4 months postpartum, you're probably losing your hair. Here's a supplement. That's what I'm getting ads for now. And it just preys on vulnerabilities that are things that like you can't prevent postpartum hair loss. Like it's something that's going to happen. The supplement's not going to fix it. And I know that. And I'm like, Nutrafol, swipe. But like, I know a lot of people don't know that. And they're like, oh man, yeah, there's something wrong with me. I got to fix it. So yeah, it's definitely a can of worms. And social media both makes me happy because there's good resources, but frustrates me because that kind of stuff happens all the time.
100%. Well, again, is there any? We do have some questions we would like to ask. These are
Our secret
3 questions that we ask to all our guests. They're super top secret questions, especially for someone like you who listens to the pod and to our one other guest that we've had on thus far. So, should we get started with that?
Let's do it.
Nicholas?
I'll start.
I'm ready.
All right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
God, that's a hard question. That's such a hard question. I feel like I could go so many directions with that. The first thing that comes to mind, though, that is like a theme I've gotten advice from a lot of different people about is like slow down. Because I'm not good at that. And parenthood will make you slow down, even if you don't want to. So I think that's probably the hardest but best piece of advice I've gotten because it applies to a lot of facets in life. And I think a lot of my clients I work with too are similar, where we just kind of want to keep doing stuff and going fast. And maybe that's also because something I picked up from New Jersey. I feel like I'm always in a hurry for no reason.
That's that North Jersey lifestyle. We're just rushing around.
Yeah, my husband and I joke about that all the time because we moved to the South for a period of time and we were like, Southern time is a thing. But anyway, so I feel like that's probably the best piece of advice I've gotten that applies to everything.
Yes, slow down. Take life at an easy effort.
Yeah, zone 2.
Zone 2, please. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
That's a good question too. I feel like, so whenever I do like 2 truths and a lie or like fun facts, I'll usually bring up the fact, or like my lie will be that I have siblings because I'm an only child. And I feel like that surprises a lot of people. I don't know why, because I'm like, I don't know, I feel like an only child, but it does surprise people. And also a fun fact I like to bring up is that my parents are both pilots. And that just has like shaped a lot of how my life has been. Yeah, that's probably something surprising too.
I'm gonna have to send them a Calendly to get them on the pod.
Yeah.
We're gonna need that in its full.
Chris and Anita are so much cooler than I will ever be.
I believe that. I believe that. No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. My dad actually still commutes to New Jersey to fly. They live in New Hampshire. So
He flew to Jersey to get there?
Oh no, he drives. He drives to Jersey from New Hampshire to fly the plane all over the world. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I can never do his job. Very hard job.
That's super interesting. Last question. What's something you wish more people understood about, the nutrition world?
Or the fitness world.
Fitness world, sure.
Or both.
Oh, man, there's so many things. I think one, that health doesn't have a look. Even if you've been told or marketed that it does not have a look. Also, nothing about health, nutrition, or fitness is super black and white. It's all very gray. And it depends is the answer to pretty much everything, which people don't like to hear. And I think 3, I know I'm giving you several answers, but 3 is people who do extraordinary things, athletes, that type of thing, are often just very good and consistent at doing unextraordinary things over and over and over again in practice. And there's not much fancy secret. Yeah.
Just
So those are
consistency
probably
over
the big ones.
time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed it. I didn't hear any AG none in there or anything like that.
And also, here's a discount code to 7 supplements that I sell.
That's what keeps this is my simple wellness routine.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be news to some people.
Yep.
But I'm glad they're hearing it from you.
Yeah. Here's my 10-step skincare routine, and then I have all these powders. But you shouldn't have anything processed. Sarcasm.
It's rich out there.
Yeah.
It's rich out there. Yes. For those of you not from the North, the great Northeast, I'm not apologizing for the behaviors you've experienced on today's podcast, but I will use it as an excuse.
Absolutely, all day. It's something I was never aware of until I left that area, and I was like, "This is not everyone is like this. I need to
I'm
be
getting
nicer."
weird looks.
So much sarcasm, no one understands.
Yeah,
Dry,
so much.
like
So dry in
sandpaper.
here.
So
Well, this was
Holley,
great.
thank you so much for joining us. Can you let everyone know anything big coming up for you, how people can find you, hire you?
Sure. Yeah, I am Holley Fueled Nutrition pretty much everywhere, mostly on Instagram. I have a podcast, lots of free info there on sports nutrition, running, heavy on the sarcasm, heavy on the it depends and the gray area of wellness, but that's where you can find me, Holley Fueled Nutrition. And then Holley is Holley, so don't forget the tricky little silent E in there. And yeah, I've got, a lot of different online classes, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, testing, lab work, all that good stuff, and personal training too. So everything is online. So you guys can go check me out on all of those social medias.
Awesome.
Weird. I've been calling you Holy this whole time. I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
My dad was in charge of writing my name on the birth certificate. And because of Holley Motors, which makes carburetors, ironically, the carburetor is responsible for fueling the vehicle. He put the E in my name. And I'm like, well, now I fuel people, not cars. But it's kind of the same thing. It's very close. But that's why there's an E in my name. And whenever I tell that story, when I used to work in healthcare, big hospital systems, if I told that story to middle-aged men, instant respect gained. They were like, motors, cars. I'll listen to you.
That's okay. My dad named me Nicholas David after Notre Dame, ND, and they had my mom had a different name altogether for me. So that's how my name became about. I don't even like Notre Dame, so I don't know. Whatever.
I was gonna be named Altagracia, so I don't know.
You win.
I don't speak the same language as you guys, literally and figuratively. Well, I loved that. You guys got more fun facts about Holy and Notre Dame and Altagracia. Muchas gracias. Okay, so let's close this bad boy up. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And as you know, you can reach out to us at any time on the gram. You can reach out to Holy Holley on the gram. Or you can email us at between2coaches. That's TWO coaches@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.